Dear viewers, you are all aware of present situation in Bangladesh. Currently, the entire nation of Bangladesh is on a boiling spot. I would say it may be going through a big transition. Maybe a political transition is due. We have Professor Sayed Ahmed. He is a professor in American Public University and an expert of politics in Bangladesh as well as security-related issues in Southeast Asia. So, Professor Ahmed, welcome to our show. Thank you for your time. So, I guess the first thing all of our viewers would like to know how it is possible that seemingly a movement like a quota system, which is for the government job quota, where government job may not be accounting for, even I was counting, maybe 0.8% of the Bangladeshi population, can be so violent so that hundreds of students are dying and the government is it on its toe. How is that possible that such a small I would not say small democratic movement, but apparently a very innocuous, apparently a very small demand can erupt into violence in Bangladesh? Because I think that would be the first thing that majority of the audience would like to know, that such a very small thing like a quota system movement in which even the government agreed that they actually are with the student, but still, why the violence is erupting in Bangladesh?
Thank you. Yes, it's most of the audience or most of the people, those who are not inside Bangladesh, they're perplexed that how a non-political movement becomes such a powerful political movement in Bangladesh. It's really perplexing, even for some Bangladeshis too. I mean, they even did not think that, even the government did not think that. Initially, they had a tendency to underestimate this movement. They ridiculed that movement, including prime ministers and others. They did not, despite they are in power last 15.5 years, but they really underestimate this movement. So why this movement becomes suddenly such a big movement in Bangladesh? The problem is that, I mean, the government, the students perceived this way, that government tries to overturn their decision by using the High Court, because in 2018, government said that they would abolish the quota, and they did. But the students perceive that government tried to bring the quota back in the system. So since the beginning, there is a misconception, misunderstanding between the government and the students. And suddenly, when the prime minister used the word Razakar or Rezakar, it means the collaborators of the Pakistani military army during 1971 war, it's a very insulting word in Bangladesh politics and culture. And then it became a big issue. Students did not like that. And they start shouting this way, that we are the Razakars, you are Razakars. Who said? The government said it. But the government misinterpreted it, and they said these students are claiming themselves they are the Razakars and they are the followers. That means in practice, they are the followers of the fundamentalist Islamist party, Jamaat-e-Islami. So it's then government tried to justify that it's their right to violently crash this movement. And what they did, the government affiliated student organizations, they gave them in charge to violently crush this movement. And then this violent clash erupted between the government student organization and the common students. But when this clash happened, it became a big uproar in Bangladesh, because because of lack of democracy and so many other reasons, people have a deep-rooted anger against the government, and there is no proper mechanism. What we saw in the democratic society, when people have some grievances, there are so many channels they can express their opinions, their views. But in Bangladesh context, the freedom of expressions, this space was really narrow. And at the same time, what we witnessed in Bangladesh, that the government, those who are the part of the government parties, they were benefited in many ways. And huge corruptions and all that. And people interpreted the lack of democracy because there's a means that to perpetuate this type of corruption in Bangladesh. And there is no proper way to express their views and everything. Because the moment you express your views, the moment you criticize the government party, government party supporters actually termed you are the Razakars, you are against the Bangladesh, the Bangladesh freedom movement, or you are the part of Jamaat Islami. So when this type of problem happened, people become very angry and suddenly it outbursts because 15.5 years they're in power and people think that there is it is not possible to remove this government through democratic means. And as a result, we see this as some huge outcome on this issue.
So Professor Ahmed, I see there is a development of 2 points of view. One is emerging from the Indian think tank, another is from the US think tank. Now you tell me like which one maybe, probably you can substantiate and which may not be substantiated. Indian point of view is that, the government agreed with the quota system. Sheikh Hasina is bound to follow the judgment of the High Court, and she's doing the right thing by following the Constitution. She has not done anything that is unconstitutional, and yet such a big type violent movement erupted against her with so much of, it's almost like a movement to unsettle her government. So I think many of the Indian think tank is of the opinion there might be hand of China or ISA in it, because China wanted to give the transit to India, which would actually strengthen India's military logistic to its northeast, because northeast is a disputed region, especially the Arunachal, as you know, with the China. So many of the Indian think tank is of the opinion that because recently India has signed a pact to get the transit to Bangladesh, which would actually cut it logistic to 7 hours as opposed to 24 to 40 hours as it takes right now from its northern border. So that's one aspect. And on the other side, I think in aspect of the United States is that, as you pointed out, that this is maybe a legitimate movement for demanding the democracy. As you rightfully said, that the people of Bangladesh had no faith in their judiciary, had no faith in their executive or legislation either. So in neither of the three branches of the government could not bring any faith, could not bring any confidence to the people. So that was the US view, and probably the view of the global world as well, as their people are trying to understand as if they're seeing it. On the other side, in India, it is perceived as if like, Sheikh Hasina is in the favor of the student already, then why the movement? So there got to be the hand of China. So give me this synthesis of both the view. What do you think about it?
It's actually, when any movement emerge in any country or any severe political incident happened, we always notice that at the same time, some kind of conspiracy theories emerged, internally sometimes, externally sometimes. And most of the cases, the goal of these types of conspiracy theory is to discredit the movement. We saw in Bangladesh history too. For example, in 1971, Bangladesh liberation movement, at that time Pakistani military dictators actually said that this is due to the Indian conspiracy. Because of the Indian conspiracy, they are all miscreants, they are the terrorists. So Pakistani government has the right to crush this movement violently. So when we see that somebody tried to say that this movement is ignited by the foreign countries, whether China, US, or others, that the goal is to discredit the movement. And in reality, it is not possible for any foreign organizations to organize this type of movement in other countries. It's totally absurd. But these types of conspiracy theory always get popularity. So some people also like to say these types of things. So this is basically the reasons that.
So you're saying it's a very genuine student movement born out of frustration of not having enough democracy where they can actually channel their anger.
Exactly. And Because when there's a democracy or a democratic system, there's a two things. First, they channel their anger, what you said, and then they have a hope that through ballot they can change the
Yes,
government.
they can change the. Now, coming back
Just
to the
one
fact.
second. One second. Say, for example, only a few months back, we saw huge peasants movement in India, right? But nobody is thinking to topple the Modi government through peasants movement. It's on right in Bangladesh issues. There is because Bangladeshi citizens know there is no. I mean, through ballot, it's not possible to change the government. So it actually created a huge anger to the government, and this is the main reasons for these types of uprising in Bangladesh.
And I want to come back to that. What I'm observing, if you look at from birth of Bangladesh in 1975, father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his family was wiped out because he also established a dictatorship called Bakshal. Then the next president was also killed because also same dictatorial tendency. Then Ershad was removed in 91 by the similar kind of movement. So the point here is that why in Bangladesh the culture of democracy is not maturing. You are almost 50 years into independence. You are actually embedded well into a largest democracy into the world. You are in the belly of a largest democracy into the world. So my question is that why then the culture of democracy is not maturing into Bangladesh? It's a 50 years. I mean, it's like the same like we say that, okay, Bangladesh has gone, the become a test playing nation in cricket almost 25 years, yet why there the cricket team is not maturing? I think I'll ask the same question. It's the 50 years into the practice of an independent nation. They're well entrenched within a democratic nation. Then why not this is happening? So what do you think as a professor of political science, what is lacking in Bangladesh that your political culture of democracy is not maturing?
Yeah, it's almost 53 years Bangladesh gained
Right,
independence.
almost 50 years plus. So why it is not happening?
But still there is a no democratic culture, I would say, even developed in Bangladesh. It's probably very
But again,
hard.
I have an even more fundamental question. Is it only an issue of democratic culture, or do you think that Bangladesh constitution need to be amended? Is it just a question of culture? Is it just a question of some geopolitics, or is it a question that Bangladesh constitution have to be amended to make it function more?
No, only amendment of constitution will not solve the problem. Bangladesh constitution, I mean, on paper, it's a democratic, more or less. I mean, you can debate on nuanced issues. I'm not going to that direction. The problem is that many things, why democracy did not develop or democratic institutions did not develop that way, the way we saw the democratic institutions in the Western countries or in India. Now, one of the reasons is that since the beginning, since the start of Bangladesh, when people expected that Bangladesh will be secular, democratic Bangladesh. But all of a sudden, everybody was stunned that in 1975, Bangladesh became a one-party dictatorial government established. It was unimaginable for, I mean, so lots of people around the world, I would say, because the Awami League always fought for democracy. So the problem started from that point. And after that long time, Bangladesh went through various forms of military regime there. And besides this, the political parties, including the Awami League, there is no practice of democracy inside the party. And same as the BNP too. So political leaders and the political supporters, they are not used to, they don't know what is the meaning of political culture. I mean, the democratic culture. What we saw that, for example, in American Democratic Party or Republican Party, how they actually nominated their candidates. In Bangladesh issues, only the party chief nominate who will run where. And number three, the disbelief among the political parties, because we saw that any political party came to power, they tried to be in power forever. So this culture, there is not a single election that is unfortunate and really sad for the political parties that they could not organize an election where it was other political parties, those who defeated, they would say that it's a credible elections. They welcome the winners in the election. Last 53 years, it did not happen. Even under caretaker government, the elections, the political parties who defeated, they felt that election was rigged for that they defeated. So many things. I would like to summarize this way. First of all, the lack of democratic culture inside the political party. Political parties were not able to conduct a viable and credible election in Bangladesh, and the huge presence of what I would like to say that culture of feudalism or culture of or authoritarian trend among the political party. Unless we can do some kind of political cultural reform inside the political party, because without the democratic mindset of the political leaders and the political supporters, it's not possible to establish democracy in any country. Because in Indian history, since the beginning, there is no disruption of democracy. As a result, democratic
No, but that
institutions.
people may disagree with you. So, for example, in Congress is a dynastic party, just like BNP or Army League. Yet, I think the Congress leader has added to democratic rule to a great extent, despite the fact. So, I think your assertion that the political party is feudal and that therefore they won't support democracy may not be true if you look at the Indian history, because Congress has been the feudal party in India, and yet I don't think that they have been that big of a threat to democracy. But coming back to that point, I think the most of the Bangladeshi people of Bangladesh may not agree to you. Their viewpoint is that Sheikh Hasina has been installed and her dictatorship has been actually fueled by the support from Delhi. That their point of view is that Sheikh Hasina has been well shielded from Western criticism because West need India. I mean, one of the criticism that most of the Bangladeshi people I hear is that basically they say, look, here's the situation. Sheikh Hasina could run her dictatorship without any trouble because she is well protected from the West and shielded by India because she is serving the purpose of India. West need India from business standpoint. So what happened is West will not surpass Indian opinion in the matter of Bangladesh. And this is the reason that Sheikh Hasina is allowed to have her dictatorship. So, I mean, you might talk about the feudalist culture, as you say, lack of the political, internal issues that is actually, because it's as you said, it's a culture of last 50 years. It didn't start with Sheikh Hasina for sure. Would you like to say that point to the people of Bangladesh who believe that this present dictatorship is actually supported by India, when India has utilized the current geopolitical situation where West need India against China, and therefore India has taken this as an advantage to actually establish this dictatorship in Bangladesh?
Yes, it's a widespread belief across the board in Bangladesh because before this election, Americans people believe that took some initiatives to have so-called free and fair election in Bangladesh, but people believe that America was not successful. Whether it's true or not, whether America's intention was not, it's a debatable issue. But people's perception was that America could not do that because of the Indian support, because USA needs India. So India was able to influence USA to back down. And because of strong Indian support, the present Awami League government is in power. It's a strong popular belief across the board, even including those who are the supporters of Awami League. They also believe that, and most of the Awami League supporters I talked, they believe that without the Indian support, it would be very difficult for them to sustain in Bangladesh. And this reality, what happened that strong anti-Indian sentiment for political reasons emerged in Bangladesh, which is not good for both countries to have a good relationship, because country-to-country relationship also you need the peoples-to-peoples relationship. So this is the actually negative outcome of a country when the democratic practice is absent in any political system.
Now, I would like to convey view of some of the Indian viewers. What they're surprised at that today, if you look at Bangladesh, most of its staple foods, whether it's an onion to any other thing you can imagine, food item to many other items, is all supplied by India. If in the time of any medical emergency, any Bangladeshi will run into Calcutta or Chennai, right? I mean, you know all that. So point that being, again, most of the Indians don't get it, that how it is possible for a country of Bangladesh who are so dependent on Indian everything, starting from the medicine to food, the basic thing. They're so dependent on India. How it is possible for the people of Bangladesh to become so much anti-India when they're actually so much dependent of India? They're coming to India for medicine, coming to India for food and everything, even for vaccine time on the time of the pandemic, right? So, so here is most of the people would like to think, and I should be very honest and brazen to carry these views of the Indian people, because I think we need to be very honest in have a meaningful discussion. So they feel that it is because of the religious reason, because Bangladesh is a Sunni majority country. Uh, they do not like a Hindu majority Indian because of the driven by their belief in faith, not driven by the rationality of the situation, that they are actually dependent of India. They need India so much where they consume so much of Bollywood culture and everything there. I also see even most of your cricket channel, they actually speak about Indian cricket more than Bangladeshi cricket. So it's an apparent contradiction that they consume so much of Indian content, they consume so much of Indian food, Indian medicine, and yet they're anti-Indian. Explain me this.
They're anti-Indian, they're politically anti-Indian, not culturally and socially. We have to have a clear distinction about it, because you will see hardly any Bangladeshi people, those who don't like Indian people or Indian anything. This is not the problem. And the problem actually arises due to the politics. The politics, I would like to explain few things, first historically and then the present day. Because Pakistan was created on the basis of Muslim nationalism, and there is a inherently Muslim nationalism is against anti-Indian politically. And this was a very powerful political ideology still in Bangladesh. Why it's a very powerful political ideology? It should not be in reality, because Bangladesh was emerged on the basis of secular Bengali nationalism. But why Bengali nationalism cannot be a powerful political ideology? The problem is that the common people, they don't support any political ideology just reading by the text what's written there. Because Bengali nationalists, before coming to power, before 1971, they said that these Muslim nationalists, they're the autocratic, they're non-democratic, they're corrupted, and etc. So if we, the Bengali nationalists, came to power, we will make Bangladesh a democratic nation based on secularism, based on equality. There will be no discrimination. There will be no corruption. We will respect human rights. We will respect the freedom of expression. But when the Bengali nationalists comes to power, since the beginning, people witness the opposite. How they become a dictator, tyrant tendency among them, and massive corruption, lack of freedom of expressions, and all that. So that makes them disillusioned. And they thought that this political party is highly associated or attached to India, and India is behind them because India is not criticizing their activities. The way the Western countries, especially America, criticized when there's a severe violation of human rights and others, but India, they found that never criticized this government. Or this Bengali nationalists when they are in power or when they are not in power. So this creates huge disillusionment about India. Number two, there is the leftist political ideology, which is not powerful, but their concept that India is a new colonial power and India is an emerging imperialist power, which become very popular across the board. So they believe that, the people feel that the business deal or any kind of things going on between business issue, India is playing an emerging imperialist power. Imperialism is an economic term, that the business going on not on business terms, India is using its state power to take advantage in business. And besides this, so many issues, we saw that the barbed wire around Bangladesh, the border killings, the Tista deal issues, the transshipment issues. At the same time, Indian denial to give Bangladesh corridor to go to Nepal and Bhutan, the Farakka barrage issues, all made Bangladeshi people, a good number of Bangladeshi people think that India is acting here as a big brother or a new colonial power. Indian government and the ruling Awami League, they are not able to debunk this ideology incredibly to the government, incredibly to the people. So when people perceive that India is playing as an imperialist power or as a colonial power like the British or the...
But you know what? I don't like to pause you here because this is also a little bit perplexing to me. I understand what you're speaking about, but if you look at it, right? I mean, during the time of pandemic, Indian government, the current BJP, who they call it a Hindu nationalist government, they have supplied vaccine to Bangladesh, right? So whenever Bangladesh needed any kind of food insecurity, like for the food security, for the medical security, current Indian political entity has been very helpful throughout. I mean, if you look at the history in the recent time, right? So the question that I think the most of the Indians are raising, that why then, and you are also claiming the fact that Sheikh Hasina has the full control of the state media and every other media. So isn't that more natural that to the interest of the Sheikh Hasina government and to the Indian government, there would have been a more favorable media view to shape the opinion of the people? The India has acted more friendly, whereas what I see in Bangladesh, the opinion has gone other way around. It has become very anti-India, despite the fact that India has provided so much of support from the pandemic to this time. Why did this happen? I mean, I couldn't understand this part of the evolution.
The thing is that, say for example, just giving some example, hypothetical scenario. For example, say the leftist, for example, it's a hypothetical scenario. They are against, all types of leftists are against US, for example. They thought all the problems around the world due to the US, and for them USA is imperialist. Now say that USA provided some donation due to some emergency situation, it would not change their perception about US. Even that moment, they might create, they might criticize USA, and they might find there is some political motive behind this help, behind this aid. So this types of situation emerged in Bangladesh because of the so many issues, border killings and others. What I tried to briefly mention, that Bangladeshi people felt that Bangladesh become Indian colony. Whether it's right or wrong is a different.
But again, come back to this point. So let us talk about the reality, right? So the reality of the situation is that Bangladesh, if you look at geographically, it will look just like another state in India. If you look at the map of geography, because it is surrounded by all the states of India. I think it's Bangladesh is probably 7% of the border is the Indian border with the 7 states. Now, given that situation, given the fact in whether it is in Europe or anywhere in Africa, if a state is landlocked, and locked completely by another big nation, I mean, think of the Russia-Ukraine situation. Think of the Taiwan-China situation. So Russia and Ukraine, they share a common history, and even Ukraine is not landlocked by Russia. At least I would say that 50% is only locked by the Russian influence. Here, Bangladesh is almost 100% discovered. So obviously, for the security reason, India will not about the India, like any country, do not want that there is a enemy state that is landlocked within its state. It's not possible. It has to be a state that both the state has to, they cannot afford the animosity against each other. It has to be a friendly nation, has to be a nation based on the faith. So my point of view is that right now, if you look at it, the business, what I see from my personal experience, that businessman of Bangladesh where actually in the last 15 years, there's been a great business between India and Bangladesh. I've never seen that before. Bangladeshi businesses are investing into India. They're expanding their export into India. Same thing happening. Indian big capitalists like Adani's and the Tatas have been expanding into Bangladesh, which is good because, you know, it's the business, the prosperity of Bangladesh is happening. So the point here is that despite so many good things happening between India and Bangladesh, which is very visible during the time of Sheikh Hasina, how it is possible that now the capitalist in Bangladesh, capitalist organization in India, then the security organization in Delhi, they all want, and they have to have a favorable, friendly government in Bangladesh for all the good reasons. And then if you look at the Bangladeshi democratic system, they will not favor a government that is pro-Indian. They believe that they should actually, because if you look at it, if you actually right now, if you conduct a voting, probably 90% of Bangladesh would say that, no, we want a government that favors China. They said that I want a protection from China. And that is not practically possible. Indian government will not allow another Pakistan to be born inside it. So this contradiction that is going on, that there is a want of the people. There's a people who want something. And then there is a geopolitical reality. And I see that they're in a coalition path. And I do see that that coalition is happening even with this violent student movement in the geopolitical security situation. So how do you explain? Because I do see that Bangladesh's future is pretty much locked within this contradiction right now. How Bangladesh or the people of Bangladesh can now navigate through this contradiction? Because if they can't, I think the future of Bangladesh can be very much challenging.
Yes, the problem, yes, definitely. And the problem lies because the lack of democracy and democratic practices in Bangladesh. Every country wants that this country's neighbor will be friendly government there. There's no problem about that. But the friendly government has to come through viable and credible election. This is severely lacked in Bangladesh since, last, I would say, how many years? 12 years or something. The last credible election was Bangladesh in 2008. After there's no credible election in Bangladesh. This is the problem. Say, for example, in Nepal, whatever there's a kind of democratic practices there. Even the Indian parties, the Nepali Communist Party come to power. India knows that next election might be Nepali Congress. There's a possibility to come to power. And in Bangladesh case, I would like to say that there is no political party is like that sense anti-Indian the way political parties in Pakistan. It's not. We saw that the BNP.
No, Professor Ahmed, I'd like to beg to differ here because Indian experience back in the BNP time in 2001 and 2006 has been bitter because many of the terrorists in Northeast separatist terrorists of Bangladesh has been sheltered in Dhaka during the time of BNP. So I would say that Indian may not agree with the fact because we have seen the time of the BNP government, the government of Bangladesh has harbored and nurtured some of the Indian terrorists. And I think that was one of the reasons that Indians are very, very skeptical and concerned.
Yeah, this was the only, this is the main reasons that India is concerned about the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. But at the same time, if you see, they changed their anti-Indian rhetoric in the last 10 years. It's also true. The way they were against vocal, the political leaders, I'm not talking about the supporters, the political leaders, they changed their tone and they are, and you know that they are also very aware that it's not possible to take anti-Indian stand like say Fidel Castro took anti-American stand against the US, and none of the Bangladeshi political parties stand is not like that. It's also true. And to have a better relationship, India probably need to know, not only put all the eggs in one basket, because in any democratic system, the beauty of democratic system is that you need to know how to deal with, how to work with the other political parties. But the problem is that the lack of democracy. If there's a proper democratic system in Bangladesh, it would not have a problem. It would not have a question. The questions you raised, you would not raise today. Because let's say, for example, hypothetically, very anti-Indian political party is in power. But we all know then the election would be free, fair, and credible. If this party didn't do well in their tenure, they'll be replaced by the people. So lack of democracy actually creates problems between India and Bangladesh. Mistrust, distrust between India and other political parties created due to the lack of democracy. If democracy is installed properly, who is in power, it doesn't matter. So
but Professor Ahmed, let me tell you that, give you a counter question here, that why do you think, think of the two ways here, right? China has started expanding its muscles in last 20 years. We all know that. Before that, there was no threat of China that much to India. And you know that China doesn't recognize Arunachal Pradesh, which is the northeast province of India. And you also know that all the 7 provinces in northeast is sandwiched between Bangladesh and China. And there is a chicken neck that all these 7 provinces are basically, there's a area of the corridor in Siliguri, which is only 17 kilometers long, and that is the only way India can travel the good between India to there. So my question to you is that Before 20 years back, China was not so powerful. India did not need to be so much being threatened by China. Now, China and Pakistan is in an axis, and now if China and Bangladesh also form an axis against India, Northeast is gone. Security of the Indian Northeast is gone. I mean, that is as simple as that. I think Putin has the same concern with the Ukraine in the matter of the almost similar kind of geopolitical situation. And if you look at the Ukrainian situation also, where always Russia wanted a favorable government in Ukraine. That's why they did not want Ukraine to join European Union or the Western allies. I do view the situation is more or less similar is happening in Bangladesh, where India definitely do not want uh, Bangladesh to join the hands of the China-Pakistan axis. Although I would say the situation is much more volatile because obviously India is also in the Russian axis as well. Now, situation is that given that kind of geopolitical reality, do you think it is possible for the Indian government to look at the Bangladesh democracy in that way? Because even if you look at the history of United States, US also supported a lot of dictators who supported US. In fact, US becoming even a great democracy, they could not support many of the democracy because eventually most of the democracy in Latin America traditionally has been pro-leftist and has been anti-United States. So I do see the situation is the same way that India is facing the same reality, that if you have a democratic government in Bangladesh, it will be invariably will be anti-India, and they actually prefer some dictator that will favor India. So tell me whether the Indian policymakers are making any mistake here as much as the US policymaker made the same mistake about the Latin America. I do see a parallel here.
Yeah, it's not parallel, and at the same time, the comparison you made, Russia, Ukraine, and this is not applicable here because I don't think so. I mean, it is not Bangladesh interest, regardless of the political party in power, to develop anti-Indian axis and make Bangladesh, in between the two big powers regional fight. I mean, if somebody has a minimum sense, they are
no,
not.
but you can say the same thing to Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine, Zelensky, it did happen, right? I mean, obviously, the entire thing that today you are having the Ukraine-Russia war is but because the fact that Zelensky started favoring the NATO and the European Union. So why do you think that something that happened in Ukraine will not happen in Bangladesh?
Okay, there's two different things because India and China is not country like, say, for example, India and Pakistan. China is India's largest trade partner. And India and China, they are also part of the BRICS. They are the part of the Shanghai Cooperation, if I don't make mistake. And there are lots of areas, mutual cooperation between these two countries, number one. And number two,
there are political differences over the Arunachal Pradesh, over the Ladakh, and over
so many issues. Yes, at the same time, it's a very strange situation between these two countries. And Bangladesh is in a very critical position in this fight or in this very complex political dynamics, no doubt about it. But at the same time, always what I understand, my understanding is that, I mean, to have to ensure security of any particular country, I'm not going to compare the Latin America, but let's focus on our South Asia. The democratic norms and principle is the biggest security guarantee. If, again, I would like to say, for example, hypothetical scenario, let's say anti-Indian, which is, there is not such anti-Indian party exist in Bangladesh. This way, I would like to have the comparison of what I said, the way Fidel Castro is against the US. This is very clear.
Well, Professor Ahmed, there also political scientists may differ. Okay, go ahead, but I would like to oppose that point because even Fidel Castro came to United States and to seek the support of US, and then
and that is a different story. Just I'm giving an excuse, or the way Iran is against USA, for example. There is no political party exists because all this reality across the board in Bangladesh that for the Bangladesh good future, Bangladesh needs to have very good ties with India. No single political party is against it, even including the Jamaat-e-Islami. But the problem is that the perception is that when the deal issues came, India as a big power, India dictate Bangladesh, and because of according to them, the opposition political parties, the ruling party is a pro-Indian, so they are not dealing, or they are not capable to deal effectively to serve the interest of the Bangladeshi people. This is the problem, according to opposition party. So let's say, for example, hypothetical scenario, the A1 political, very anti-Indian political parties in power, say, for example, in Maldives or in Nepal. So when there is a democracy, what I would like to say, in next election, if they don't perform well, they will not be in power. So India doesn't need to be afraid of that. India, before they did long time with the General Ziaur Rahman, General Ershad, and the BNP, it did not care. Yes, 2001, 2006, severe things happened. BNP did. I agree. I'm not going to do that area. But India also needs to know, and India know how to deal with these political parties. But when India just simply favor, whether in reality or not, the people's perception, there's one political party and who is not running itself now with the democratic norms, values, and it created fomenting anger against India. They think that, again, the same perception what the leftists developed, that India is a new colonial or new imperialist power. But this is the problem. So when there's a democracy there, be especially established democracy, it actually helps to solve so many problems. So when in France, yes, there is a, I mean, people are.
But Professor Ahmed, then I'll ask the same question. I mean, US is the greatest proponent of the democracy, yet it has to rely on the dictators. It can't rely on the democracies around the Latin America. I see the same thing happening with India. So tell me, why not? I mean, what India is doing different than the US is not doing?
Exactly. This is the, I mean, the contradictions of the democratic, the states. Those who have a long tradition of democracy, they're nurturing democracy in their own state, inside the state, say UK, USA, and now India. And they are not standing for democracy other parts of the world. And this is the problems of democracy. And for that, many countries in global south, especially the people, they lose hope, or they lose their confidence on democracy when they see this as a hypocritical behavior. I think is the time. What happened is that 2024, we have to look forward and we have to adhere to our democratic norms, principles, and values. Only this way we can solve the problem in the world, not bypassing democracy. And this is the biggest mistakes, I would argue, that the democratic states, that when they favor the dictatorial regimes over the democracy. So at the end, when proper democracy would be able to solve, why there is a problem between China, and if you think, let's, for example, hypothetically, if China is a democratic country today, it would have been much more better way India could deal with China. Because there is also theory that two democratic countries don't fight each other. They know how to solve the problem through negotiation. So at the end, we have to stand for democracy. There is no second thought about it.
Thank you. So, Professor, I think your viewpoint, summary viewpoint, is that whether it's a challenge between United States and China, China and India, India and Bangladesh, having a functioning democracy in all the countries is the solution. That's the long-term sustainable. You said that you might solve it probably short-term, right, by bypassing the democracy, but in a long term, it's the will of the people that has to be recognized, or else we'll get into this kind of situation. If I say that, that's the message I got from you.
Exactly. I completely agree with you that at the will of the people should prevail. And when two democratic nations stand next to each other, there will be definitely a good relationship between them. Yes, any neighboring country or any country, any part of the world, there will be a problem. There will be lots of issues should be there. But in a democratic government, when two countries there, they can solve their problem through mutual dialogue and discussion and through mutual respect. In a big and besides this, the big countries, not only India, it's Russia, China, and USA, also need to actually avoid the big state mentality. We are the biggest state, so we can dictate, we can govern, we can advise, and we can threat other small states. This mentality, they should give up.
No, but that's a contradiction. I think it's a democracy of those countries. If in United States and India, I mean, I have been fortunate to vote for both the largest democracy, right? I voted in India, I voted in US, and very much follow politics of both. It's not possible. See, in both the countries, people would like to see a strong government, and a strong government means who can threaten their neighbors. It goes invariably like that. People like to see, and it become, you can say, it's a masculine philosophy. It's a very much patriarch masculine
No,
philosophy.
no,
Runs
yes,
very
I
deep in
totally
both
agree.
the countries.
Yeah, but you see, throughout the progression of human civilization, if you think 100, 200 years back, how the big power behaved to the small power, but gradual progression that we need to, at least philosophically, we should prevail this type of ideology to bullying or threatening. It would not actually ultimately solve the problem.
Yeah, true, but in that's the shortcoming of democracy, right? I mean, you told a lot of positive thing about it, but you saw when the Trump's bullet passed by Trump, and Trump says fight, and it immediately his favorable point showed by a couple of 5 to 10 points, which means that in democracy, people favor the masculine leaders who can fight for them, who can stand for them. It happens in all democracy. I think it's a democratic inherent contradiction, as you said, that in one state they want a democracy, and then they want a strong leader who can actually threaten the smaller neighbor. They said, okay, our will be prevailed. And it happens, I think, throughout the history.
Just one sentence I would like to add here. That is this is a remnant of feudal or poor democratic culture. It's still there. Although these countries are democratic, but the non-democratic cultures also prevail because of the centuries of historical practice. It would take time to get rid of it. It's not that one day it
I
would be.
fully agree that democracy should be viewed as a system in evolution, not a final system that can solve everything. People have to be patient. Thank you, Professor Ahmed. Thank you for your time. I hope that your message that democracy is the core of solution, and everybody has to think that it is only democratic way solution, be it international or national solution, is possible. I think that's a very strong message you just said today. And I hope that people will get it, because otherwise, people have a tendency to believe in more of the conspiracy theories around, which may not be true all the time. Thank you.